What are your exit options after doing audit at either a big four or a mid-tier or small firm? Woo! Okay, cool. Let's get started with this. So a lot of people have been asking me, how do I get from audit to IB? That's what I did. But that's not the only route that you can do. There are so many different routes, and let's just start with a few of them here. So the traditional kind of routes that a lot of people go down, you can sort of do internal audit in-house. So I've seen people who literally will go to either big firms, smaller firms, whatever it is, but I mean, generally it's bigger firms because they're the ones that require an internal audit team. So what do you do in internal audit? It's kind of similar to what you do in external audit. The only difference is you're mainly just focusing on controls, really. A lot of controls testing. So I've noticed that apparently PwC don't do a lot of controls testing, whereas like a Deloitte, for instance, a lot of it's control heavy. So that will put you in good stead for that. People do it because they want some familiarity, but maybe just don't want the sort of, constant of those different clients, and it has less pressure in my eyes, internal audit does. And yeah, like I said, it is common in a lot larger firms that this function is. I know people, for instance, I worked in BCM in Deloitte, and a lot of people went to other investment banks and then did internal audit there for fairly decent money. So that is one route. Now, another traditional route is becoming a financial accountant. So financial accountants are generally, you're basically preparing month-end accounts for a company. These will be like financial statements, month-end close. We might as well put management accounting in here as well. Management accounts are generally doing the same thing, but it's more to look at sort of internal costs and operational measures taken, and you basically just feed that up to management, and then they discuss it at their board meetings and whatnot. So yeah, that's another sort of route that a lot of people do go down. I know a lot of people, especially when I was in my mid-tier firm, people left that audit to then go and be financial accountants in that capacity. Another role which is familiar to me, as I've literally just joined it, is FP&A. So FP&A is sort of more commercial focused and sort of budget focused and forward looking. So you're not preparing like month end what's just happened. You're literally looking, okay, cool. So if we were to do this for the next year or the next 5 years, what would our cash balance be? How much cash do we have to play with? What would be our profits and things like that? So it's all about budgeting, forecasting, and then that sort of culminates in sort of the strategy of the firm as well. So it's more strategic focused, and in my eyes are slightly more interesting rather than doing just bog standard accounts. Another one which kind of feeds off the sort of finance one is when people do like group consolidation. So if in audit you've done a lot of group work, you could be part of a group finance team. I work alongside them in my current role. So what they do is they work with all the regions below, and then they'll sort of consolidate all them entities into the group entity, which, because I work for a listed firm, then that's the one that gets reported at the end of the day. Now, in terms of salaries, you're sort of looking at, coming out of audit is slightly better than audit. It's basically like, I'd say if you come out in third year, so generally what people do is they qualify and then look for these jobs. So say if you're coming out of third year, you're going to get slightly better, maybe 5 to 10k more than you would like in your current role in external audit. That's sort of where you're probably looking at in terms of salary. So don't expect a lot, and your bonus isn't going to be massive either. It's probably like 10%ish. So don't be like, oh my god, like I should be earning more than this and stuff. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Your hours are going to be probably less than audit as well. So in a way, it's a win-win. Now, let's move on to commercial and strategic finance roles. So within this, you have a commercial finance business partner. I'll be honest, I didn't know what a finance business partner was until I literally joined my current role. What they do is they work with operations a lot. And from what I've seen, it's a lot to do with cost savings. A lot of teams now are looking at cost savings just because of, what's happened since COVID and things like that. So yeah, there's an experienced finance business partner that I work alongside, and she's constantly working with the sort of head of ops to understand where we can cut costs, what we can allocate where. And I think it's quite a hard role in terms of you have to balance so many expectations of so many different people. She gets expectations from the board, she gets expectations from different teams, she gets from different divisions, and she has to manage all of them expectations and present them again to the board, and then they'll have pushbacks. It's honestly, it is hard. You've got to be able to manage so many different stakeholders, and it's quite a demanding job, I'll be completely honest with you. You need to be really level-headed and have good communication skills to succeed in that role. Now, another one which I think is quite really interesting is corp development. So you might find it hard to get one of these roles because corp dev is a role that a lot of people actually go into like sort of after M&A if they don't want to do as many hours. But corp dev, essentially what it is you're looking at strategy and you're looking at M&A for the company that you're working for. So yeah, you're constantly looking at opportunities, but also like what you can buy, but also what you can sell. But like I said, these are quite competitive because a lot of M&A people go for them. So it's not something that is going to be like readily available, I'll be honest with you. And a lot of companies, bigger companies have these roles, so it's even less sort of visible. Another one which is I don't know if it's hard. It is hard to get into just because the number of roles, but there's different types of it. So I'll do a completely different video on this because I've looked into roles for this. Is investor relations. Now, investor relations is different for like working at a PE firm compared to working at a listed company. It varies so much. From my perspective, I'll talk at it from a listed company perspective because I dealt with IR when I was working in banking on the public M&A. Yeah, so what you're doing is you're essentially the mouthpiece, well, sort of like between sort of the market and your company. You are constantly chatting to shareholders, you're constantly chatting to analysts who cover your stocks for the market. So it's a very interesting role, but it's quite a demanding role. Like you have to be able to turn things around quickly. You're always in the room with senior stakeholders of the company, your boards and things like that. And it is quite a demanding role, but it can be quite fulfilling at the same time. You just have to be able to manage loads of different stakeholders and wear different hats at the same time. But it is quite a favourable role, to be honest with you. Now, if I'm looking at maybe how much you would earn in these kind of roles, you're probably looking at slightly higher than I've just mentioned. So probably about 10 to 15k higher. Starting maybe than what you've just come out in audit, and the bonus is slightly larger as well, not a lot, maybe 5 to 10% larger. Now, the next one I want to focus on is sort of ones that are more in line with financial services. Well, I worked at BCM at Deloitte, and I saw a lot of people go into these kind of roles, and it's sort of like reg reporting. Reg reporting can be one role which essentially like it's almost like a fund accounting kind of role you can go into, like in a PE firm, in a venture capital firm as well. Like a lot of these firms have these kind of roles. It's very accounting-y, but yeah, you just basically have to ensure that you're going in line with like the FCA and everything's being reported in line with that. So you have to be quite knowledgeable in terms of the rules. Another one that one of my friends went into, which was a product control route. So product control basically is a supporting function for front office. So people actually use this role as a stepping stone to get into front office, because it's not really middle office, it's literally a supporting role for front office. What you do in product control, like for instance, so I used to audit a major investment bank who had a massive trading floor, and they would work with sort of the traders who are offering products. For instance, there's loads of different products, and they would say, right, we need to ensure that everything's getting fed into the P&L from our side correctly. So they're sort of the intermediary between the traders and the back office, essentially. So people, I don't know if it's really mid office, because when I talk about mid office, I'm talking about operation stuff. It's slightly more than that, but it is a good role. I had a couple of friends who went into that right after doing external audit. One that, like I've said, I've mentioned previously, is that sort of internal audit. It kind of feeds into this a bit. It's risk. So risk is, again, sort of very similar to internal audit in terms of your controls, your SOX controls, and any risks that do arise. Like a lot of, so when a company audits your company, you will obviously know this because you're an external auditor, hopefully, if you're watching this or you know about it. At the end, there is a paper paper that is produced by the auditors and it's presented at the audit committee, and it essentially highlights the risks that were brought up in the audit. The company is then tasked with remediating those risks. And who does that? It is like the risk team and stuff like that, and controls team. So that's another step that I've seen some people take. When you're looking at salaries for these, it's kind of similar to them sort of commercial and strategic finance. To be honest, it all depends on where you work. I know people who worked at decent, like big investment banks, and they earn not bad money from them kind of roles. So yeah, just be wary of sort of where you're going to work a lot of the time. The next one I think is most akin to what people want to do, which is sort of M&A kind of stuff. Now, if you're in external audit and you can't go straight into advisory, a lot of people, the stepping stone is to do transaction services or financial due diligence, as it's called in a few firms. This, like I've said this many times to people, at Deloitte, a lot of people move from external audit to that and then go into advisory if they can't get the move to advisory straight away. Because the thing is, so what you do in this job, you're brought on to deals where you're doing a lot of the FDD. So for instance, when I was in the investment bank, we would use Deloitte sometimes, and they would come in on a deal and then literally going through all the like say if we're on a buy side deal, they will do all the DD on the company, the target that we're trying to buy. They'd go through all their past accounts and everything like that, go through all their reports, everything, just to ensure there's no funnies. Then they'll come up with a Q&A list, do a lot of Q&As, and these meetings can last hours. I've been on some and it's mental. So that's one. Another one is going into sort of evaluations role. So I know like PwC have a deals team, and then within that you'll have like a valuations team. This is very good for improving your modeling skills, or someone who is good with modeling. You're going to be doing a lot of models here, and it's quite a very technical kind of role rather than sort of client facing. So if I know a lot of strong people within M&A who started in this role, really good to hone your skills. Like, I'm technically not that great, but these people are solid, I'll be honest with you. Now, and the other one, like I mentioned, is advisory. So a lot of people can get into advisory. It's not actually, I say a lot of people, it's not as common as going into TS or valuations. I was lucky enough to do it, and I think that is sort of the next and then from there you can literally go into a bank, or some people literally will go to audit straight into an advisory role at a bank. We hired someone recently who was at a big four firm in external audit, and they came in as an analyst. So yeah, I mean, and typically these will pay quite good money with your TS and your valuations, because they're usually still at a big four firm. They're not going to be that much higher than you're currently on. But if you do move externally into advisory or whatever, and that is a route that can pay quite a lot more than you expect, like more than, for instance, like you might get like 20k more, 25k more than what you're on. And lastly is consulting. It's very similar to advisory. People think of consulting as, is it less hours? Not necessarily. It can be still, depending on what kind of consulting you're going into. I'm talking about like strategic consulting, probably like M&A consulting. That can be still quite demanding, so just be wary of that as well. And then lastly, want to go on to some just random careers that I know some people go into. Some people can go into PE. I don't know many people that have, to be honest with you. And when I talk about PE, I'm not just talking about like fund accounting roles. Like I said, I know people who have done that. There are stories out there, I think, of people who have managed to land a front office PE role. You have to do a lot of extra stuff to do this. Like you might have to do like a CFA or something like that on the side, just to really make you stand out, and do some courses. But it's not impossible. But yeah, that could be a really favorable route. Venture capital could be an exit route if, for instance, you've done some audit some companies that maybe were like startups or anything like that. If you have any exposure to tech, that could be a definite route for you. And then going off that, going into a tech or startup, I know, so one of my mates who I bumped into recently, he went down this route and he's earning pretty good money now. Like he just went in as like a finance manager, and then from there like went up to like head of finance, and then that's how he kind of progressed. And yeah, he's doing very well. That is a good route, and you can get some equity for that, because a lot of these firms, that's how they pay. If you're willing to sort of take on that equity, that can be a really favorable route. Some people go into like the charity stuff, I don't understand why, because I've audited a charity and there were no controls, nothing. I don't know why someone would want to do that, but I understand it from the ethics point of view. It would be quite cool to do that. Pay is not that great though in that sector. And then the last one is, I've seen a lot of people do this. Well, not a lot of people, I've heard of people do this, is become like a tutor at like Kaplan or BPP or whatever training provider, like for the ACA. I can't think of anything worse, but I have heard of people do this. And out of these roles, like obviously your PE and stuff are going to pay a lot more. But yeah, they're the sort of different avenues that I just wanted to touch upon, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know when to go. And let's just touch on that point before I go is, I think personally, the best time to start looking is after you've done all your exams and you've passed. You don't have to technically be like signed off your file and stuff, but as long as like you know you're going to be time qualified, that's when I would start looking. I started looking literally as soon as I got results from my last set of exams. That's when I started looking, and I was like, all right, cool. Now I'm in a position where I'm ACA qualified. I can look now. If you leave it too long, like you get to like manager level, it can be it gets harder to pivot. You don't want to stay, personally, I don't think, longer than 5. 5 years is even too long in my eyes. If for instance you've come in as a grad, if you're doing 5 years and you've come in as a school leaver, like, or whatever, or a degree apprenticeship, 5 years is fine, I think, because it's going to take you that time to qualify. But if you've been qualified like 2 years ago and you're still in your role now, I think that's where you need to make a decision. Do you actually want to stick with this or bounce? Because it's going to get harder for you to leave. And lastly, I would not recommend leaving like halfway through your ACA or try to look for jobs. I just think it just reflects bad upon you. That's my personal opinion. I made the move in between my ACA, but that was not me actively looking. I got reached out to by Deloitte via LinkedIn, and then I was asked to interview. I went and I got the job. That is how I moved. I don't want people to be like, oh, but you did this, but I didn't actively look. So don't actively look to move. That would be my advice. But yeah, that's it, guys. Please subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Comment down below as well. Like I said, I'm trying to help as many people as I can, and hopefully you're going to be on this journey with me. And yeah, keep telling me what you guys want to see. I'm just trying to get bigger and better. Also, go listen to the podcast. It's every 2 weeks I'm releasing a new episode, and it's called Dime Drop. That's DIME space DROPP. It's on all like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's all on there. I used to have the podcast called Dime Drop before, so I've put this as like season 3 episode 1 in the seasons, but I'm calling it season 1 episode 0. If that is kind of confusing, I should probably change that. But because it's a completely rebranded podcast. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on it as well. It'd be kind of cool. And anyone that you want to see on it as well. I'm trying to get people on it, but yeah, hopefully you're rocking with it. But yeah, peace.